The bright morning sun streamed through the airport's glass walls as the Reynolds family made their way through the main terminal. Anthony Reynolds walked with the quiet confidence of a man who had built something from nothing. At 45, he had transformed his small tech startup into one of the country's leading cybersecurity firms, though you'd never guess it from his relaxed demeanor and simple, albeit expensive, clothing. Beside him, his wife Vanessa moved with the purposeful stride of someone used to making life-or-death decisions daily as the head of cardiac surgery at Memorial Hospital. Their children, 14-year-old Nia and 12-year-old Jordan, trailed slightly behind, Nia's fingers flying across her phone screen while Jordan bobbed his head to whatever was playing through his headphones. Despite being raised with privilege, both kids had their parents' same down-to-earth quality. Anthony and Vanessa had made sure of that. "Dad, are we taking the same jet as last time?" Jordan asked, pulling one side of his headphones off his ear. "The one with the cool gaming setup?" Anthony smiled, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. "That's the one. They've even updated the system since we last flew." "Sweet." Jordan's face lit up as he turned to his sister. "Nia, we can play that racing game you always lose at." Nia rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. "In your dreams, little brother." As they approached the security checkpoint, Anthony guided his family toward a discreet door marked Private Aviation Access. The security guard stationed there brightened when he spotted them. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds." "Dr. Reynolds, great to see you folks again." The guard, whose name tag read Steve, stepped forward with genuine warmth. "Heading to the medical conference in Boston, right?" "That's right, Steve," Vanessa replied with a smile. "How's your daughter doing in college?" "Still pre-med?" Steve beamed with pride. "Yes, ma'am." "Just finished her first year with straight A's. Your advice about which courses to take really helped." "Tell her to call my office anytime," Vanessa said. "I'm always happy to talk with dedicated students." Steve scanned their IDs and waved them through, pressing a button that opened the door to a separate wing of the airport, one that most travelers never saw. The private aviation terminal with its plush seating, attentive staff, and complete absence of the usual airport hassles. The family was greeted by Claire, the concierge they'd come to know over their years of flying private. "The Reynolds family. Right on time as always," she said, walking forward to greet them. "Your jet just finished its pre-flight checks. We can begin boarding in about 20 minutes. "Perfect," Anthony said. "That gives us time to grab something to eat." "Kids hungry?" Both children nodded enthusiastically. The family made their way to the terminal's private lounge area, where a breakfast buffet was laid out for travelers. As the kids filled their plates with fresh fruit and pastries, Anthony and Vanessa chatted with Claire about their itinerary. "We'll be in Boston for 4 days," Vanessa explained. "The conference runs for 3, and we wanted an extra day to show the kids some historical sites." "Always mixing learning with fun," Claire said approvingly. "Your pilot today is Captain Rivera. He's one of our best. Former Air Force, been with the company for 12 years now." As they spoke, a woman sitting in the corner of the lounge kept glancing in their direction. Patricia Winters, in her designer suit and with her carefully styled blonde hair, had been waiting for her commercial first-class flight when a delay had gotten her access to the private lounge as a courtesy. From the moment the Reynolds family had entered, her attention had been fixed on them, her expression growing increasingly puzzled and then disdainful. The Reynolds, absorbed in their conversation and breakfast, didn't notice Patricia's stares at first. Jordan was telling a funny story about his science teacher, causing the family to burst into laughter. Their easy happiness seemed to irritate Patricia even more. And then Mr. Collins said, "That's not a chemical reaction, that's just your lunch from yesterday." And Jordan delivered the punchline, making Naya snort with laughter. "How's the science fair project coming along?" Anthony asked, finishing his coffee. "Almost done," Jordan replied proudly. "My drone delivery system for emergency medical supplies is working great now that we've fixed the stabilization issue." "That's my boy," Anthony said. "Using tech to help people, that's what it's all about." Patricia's eyes narrowed as she watched them. The elegant terminal was typically filled with celebrities, business moguls, and the occasional politician, not families that looked like the Reynolds. In her mind, something didn't add up. Claire approached their table again. "Mr. Reynolds, we just received word that your jet is ready whenever you are. No rush, just letting you know." "Thanks, Claire," Anthony replied. "Kids, finish up your breakfast. We should probably get going soon. Your luggage has already been loaded." Claire continued. And Captain Rivera asked if you'd like the usual cabin setup or if you prefer the conference table configuration for this trip. So you can prepare for your presentation, Dr. Reynolds. The usual setup is fine, Vanessa said. I'll relax on this flight and review my notes at the hotel. Patricia's expression shifted from suspicion to disbelief as she listened to this exchange. She stood up suddenly and smoothed her skirt, walking with deliberate steps toward the Reynolds family. Her movement caught Anthony's attention and he glanced up just as she reached their table. "Excuse me," Patricia said, her voice carrying a forced politeness that didn't reach her eyes. I couldn't help overhearing. There must be some confusion. "This is the private aviation lounge." Anthony raised an eyebrow but responded calmly. "Yes, it is." Patricia gave a tight smile. "I think you might be in the wrong place. The main terminal is through those doors." She pointed back toward the entrance. Vanessa and Anthony exchanged a quick look, a look born from 20 years of marriage and dozens of similar encounters. Their children tensed, Jordan removing his headphones entirely now and Naya putting her phone down. "We're in the right place," Vanessa said evenly. "Thank you for your concern." Patricia's smile faltered slightly. This area is for people who are taking private jets." She emphasized the last two words as if explaining something to children. "We're aware," Anthony replied, his voice remaining level despite the woman's increasingly condescending tone. "We're waiting for our jet to finish preparations." Patricia blinked rapidly, looking from Anthony to Vanessa, then to their children and back again. "Your jet?" The disbelief in her voice was unmistakable. Claire, who had been standing nearby, stepped forward. "Is everything all right here, Mr. Reynolds?" "Dr. Reynolds?" "Everything's fine, Claire," Anthony said, though his jaw had tightened slightly. "This lady seems concerned we might be lost." Claire looked confused for a moment before understanding dawned on her face. "Oh no, Miss Winters, the Reynolds family are regular clients with us. They own a Gulfstream G650. Patricia's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She looked again at the family, taking in details she had dismissed before. Anthony's subtle but expensive watch, Vanessa's perfectly tailored blazer, the quiet confidence they both carried. I see, Patricia finally managed. "I just thought, you don't usually see a black family in the private aviation terminal?" Vanessa finished for her, voice still calm but with an edge of steel beneath it. Patricia flushed red. "That's not what I meant at all." Captain Rivera approached the group, his uniform crisp and his manner professional. "Dr. and Mr. Reynolds, it's good to see you again. We're ready for boarding whenever you are." "Thank you, Captain," Anthony said, standing up. "Kids, let's get going." The Reynolds family gathered their things, Jordan and Naya exchanging knowing glances they thought their parents didn't see. As a family, they developed an unspoken protocol for these situations. Stand tall, stay calm, and don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. "Have a good flight," Patricia said stiffly, before turning away. As they walked toward the boarding area, Jordan whispered to his sister, "Here we go again." Nia just squeezed his shoulder. "Head up, little brother. Remember what Mom and Dad always say? Our success is the best response," they finished together in a practiced whisper. What they didn't see as they walked away was Patricia Winters watching them go, her face a complex mix of emotions, embarrassment, confusion, and something that might have been the beginning of self-reflection. But the Reynolds family was already moving forward, as they always did, toward their waiting jet and the sky beyond. Patricia Winters stood frozen for nearly a minute after the Reynolds family walked away. Something didn't sit right with her. How could they afford a private jet? The doubt gnawed at her despite what the airport staff had said. She glanced at her designer watch. Her flight was delayed another hour anyway. Before she could reconsider, she was following the same path the family had taken toward the boarding area. The private aviation terminal's boarding section was even more luxurious than the lounge, with plush seating areas separated by elegant partitions for privacy. Through one of the large windows, Patricia could see several private jets parked on the tarmac, their sleek bodies gleaming in the morning sun. The Reynolds family was gathered near one of the boarding gates, talking with the pilot and what appeared to be a flight attendant. Patricia approached a different staff member, a young man organizing paperwork at a small desk. "Excuse me," she said, lowering her voice. "Those people over there," she nodded toward the Reynolds family. Are they really taking a private jet? The staff member looked confused. The Reynolds family? Yes, of course. They fly with us regularly, and they own the jet? Patricia pressed. The young man frowned slightly. Ma'am, I'm not at liberty to discuss our clients' arrangements. But they're valued customers. Patricia's lips thinned. I'm just concerned about security, you understand? It seems unusual. Everything is in order, ma'am, the staff member replied firmly. If you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Undeterred, Patricia made her way closer to the Reynolds family, pretending to admire the view of the tarmac through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was close enough now to overhear their conversation. We should arrive in Boston around 11:30, Captain Rivera was saying. Weather looks perfect all the way there. That's great, Anthony replied. Will Thomas be handling the catering today? Yes, sir. He's prepared all your favorites, including those spicy chicken wraps Jordan likes. Awesome. Jordan pumped his fist, making his parents smile. Patricia couldn't contain herself anymore. She stepped forward, inserting herself into their circle. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just have to ask, is this some kind of special program? Like a Make-A-Wish thing? 5 pairs of eyes turned to her in stunned silence. Excuse me? Vanessa finally said, her professional demeanor momentarily slipping. I mean, it's wonderful if it is, Patricia continued, oblivious to the tension she'd created. I donate to several charities myself. Is this one of those day of luxury experiences for, underprivileged families? Anthony's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice measured. No, ma'am. This is not a charity event. This is our private jet that we're boarding for our family trip. Your jet? Patricia repeated, skepticism dripping from her voice. You own it? Yes, Anthony said simply. Patricia laughed, a short, dismissive sound. Come on, really? These things cost millions. Tens of millions. Captain Rivera stepped forward, his expression professional but firm. Ma'am, I need to ask you to step back. We're preparing for departure. I'm just asking a question, Patricia said, raising her hands defensively. It seems strange, that's all. I mean, my husband is a senior vice president at Capital Finance, and even we can't afford a private jet. Nia and Jordan exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between siblings who'd witnessed this type of interaction before. Mom, Nia said quietly, should we board now? Vanessa nodded, placing a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. Yes, let's go. As they turned toward the boarding door, Patricia stepped in their path. Wait, I'm sorry, but this doesn't make sense. What do you people do that you can afford this kind of luxury? The terminal had gone quiet. Other travelers and staff were watching the scene unfold, some with uncomfortable expressions, others with open disapproval directed at Patricia. You people? Anthony repeated, his voice dangerously calm. Patricia flushed. I just meant, I know exactly what you meant, Anthony said. But I'll answer your question anyway. I'm the founder and CEO of Reynolds Cybersecurity Solutions. My wife is the chief of cardiac surgery at Memorial Hospital. Not that it's any of your business. Patricia's eyes widened slightly. Reynolds Cyber... Wait, the company that handles security for half the Fortune 500? The very same, Anthony replied. Now, if you'll excuse us, our family has a flight to catch. But Patricia wasn't ready to back down. I just find it hard to believe. I mean, how did you even get started? These kinds of opportunities don't usually what? Vanessa cut in, her patience visibly wearing thin. Don't usually come to black folks? Is that what you were going to say? Several onlookers gasped. A woman in a business suit had taken out her phone and appeared to be recording the interaction. Patricia's face reddened further. I didn't say that. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm just saying it's unusual, and in these times you can't be too careful about security. Security? Anthony repeated incredulously. We've been flying from this terminal for 6 years. Every staff member here knows us. Claire, the concierge, had appeared at the commotion and was now approaching rapidly. Is there a problem here? This woman seems to think we've snuck into the private aviation terminal and are attempting to steal a jet, Vanessa said, her tone making it clear how ridiculous she found the accusation. That's not what I said, Patricia protested, though her voice had lost some of its confidence. Jordan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Dad, can we just go? She's not worth it. The maturity in the young boy's voice broke something in Anthony's composure, the resigned wisdom in his son's eyes. A 12-year-old who already knew to expect such treatment, hit him harder than Patricia's implications. "You're right, son," Anthony said, placing a hand on Jordan's shoulder. "She's not worth our time." More phones were out now. Patricia suddenly seemed to realize she had an audience and that she wasn't coming across well. "I'm only expressing concern," she said, her voice rising. "I pay a premium for this terminal specifically for the security and exclusivity." "And you think we don't belong in your exclusive space?" Vanessa stated flatly. "Despite evidence to the contrary. I never said—" "You didn't have to say it," Anthony interrupted. Every question, every look, every assumption made it clear. Claire stepped between them. "Ms. Winters, I need to ask you to return to the main lounge area. The Reynolds family is one of our most valued clients, and you're delaying their departure." Patricia looked around, suddenly aware of the many disapproving stares directed her way. A tall man in an expensive suit shook his head in disgust. The woman recording lowered her phone only to tap something on the screen, probably uploading the video. "I was just asking questions," Patricia said defensively. "There's no need for everyone to overreact." "Your questions were inappropriate and based on assumptions you had no right to make," Claire replied firmly. "Now please return to the lounge or I'll have to call security." For a moment it seemed like Patricia might continue arguing, but then her shoulders sagged slightly. "Fine, I apologize if I caused any offense. I was just concerned." The apology rang hollow, especially with the added justification. No one responded to it. As Patricia turned to leave, Nia stepped forward. At 14, she already carried herself with the poise of someone much older, a quality she'd inherited from her mother. "Ms. Winters," she said, her voice clear and steady. "My parents built everything they have from nothing. My dad grew up in a neighborhood where most people didn't even own cars, and my mom worked 3 jobs to put herself through medical school. They taught us that success comes from hard work, determination, and treating people with respect, all people, no matter what they look like or where they come from." Patricia stared at the teenager, momentarily speechless. "I hope one day you learn that too," Nia finished, before turning back to join her family. A spontaneous smattering of applause broke out among the onlookers. Patricia's face flushed crimson as she hurried away, the weight of judgment following her. Captain Rivera cleared his throat. "If you're ready, Dr. and Mr. Reynolds, we can board now." The family nodded and followed him toward the jet. As they walked across the tarmac, the morning sun warm on their faces, Anthony squeezed Nia's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. Nia smiled. "I just said what you and Mom have always taught us." "And you said it perfectly," Vanessa added, linking arms with her daughter. As they approached the sleek Gulf Stream with its polished exterior gleaming in the sunlight, Jordan ran ahead, excitement temporarily overshadowing the unpleasant encounter. "Can I sit in the cockpit for takeoff again?" "Captain Rivera?" he called back. "After we're at cruising altitude. If your parents approve," the captain replied with a smile. Vanessa and Anthony exchanged a look, one that contained years of shared experiences, both bitter and sweet. They'd worked too hard to let someone like Patricia Winters dim their joy, or make them question their right to be exactly where they were. "Boston, here we come," Anthony said, taking his wife's hand as they climbed the stairs to their jet, leaving Patricia Winters and her small-mindedness firmly on the ground behind them. The Reynolds family had almost reached their jet when Patricia Winters reappeared, this time with a security guard in tow. The uniformed man looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with the family as Patricia gestured emphatically toward them. "That's them," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I really think you should check their credentials. Something doesn't add up." Anthony sighed deeply, exchanging a weary glance with Vanessa. They'd been through variations of this scenario before, at exclusive restaurants, in high-end stores, at their children's private school fundraisers. The constant burden of having to prove they belonged. Captain Rivera stepped forward protectively. "Is there a problem here, Officer Wilson?" The security guard, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, looked increasingly embarrassed. "No problem, Captain. Ms. Winters here has some concerns." "They claim they own this jet," Patricia said, crossing her arms. "In these times of heightened security, I think it's perfectly reasonable to verify that." Officer Wilson scratched his neck awkwardly. "Ma'am, the Reynolds family are well-known clients here." "There's really no need, and well-known to who?" Patricia interrupted. "Have you personally verified their identities?" Have you confirmed they own this aircraft? Or are you just taking their word for it? By now, a small crowd had gathered. Several airport staff members looked on with concern, and a few other travelers had stopped to watch the scene unfold. Among them was an older gentleman in an impeccable suit who observed with particular interest. Vanessa turned to her children, who were watching the exchange with expressions that broke her heart. They weren't surprised, just resigned. "Jordan, Nia, why don't you go ahead and board? We'll handle this." "No, Mom," Nia said firmly. "We're staying with you and Dad." Jordan nodded in agreement, standing a little straighter beside his sister. Anthony placed a hand on each of their shoulders, a gesture of both protection and pride before turning back to Officer Wilson. "My family has a flight to catch. What exactly do you need from us?" Before the guard could answer, Patricia cut in again. "Proper identification, proof of ownership of the aircraft, verification of your flight plan." "Ms. Winters," Officer Wilson said firmly, "you are not airport security. I'll handle this." He turned to Anthony with an apologetic expression. "Mr. Reynolds, I apologize for the inconvenience. We just need to see your IDs, which I'm sure you were going to show at boarding anyway." Anthony nodded, reaching for his wallet. "Of course." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa said quietly, though she too took out her ID. "We've been flying from this terminal for years." The children presented their IDs as well. Jordan's expression serious as he handed over his student ID alongside his passport. Officer Wilson barely glanced at them before nodding. "Everything looks in order, just as I expected. Thank you for your patience, and again I apologize for the inconvenience." "That's it?" Patricia exclaimed, her voice rising an octave. "You barely looked at them." "What about proof of ownership? What about—" "Ms. Winters," the security guard interrupted firmly. "These people have been cleared for boarding. Their identifications are valid and they're registered passengers on this flight." "But how do you know they didn't steal someone's identity or forge documents?" Patricia pressed, her face flushing. "I'm just trying to be a responsible citizen. If you see something, say something. Isn't that what we're told?" The older gentleman who had been watching stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing this situation." Everyone turned to look at him. He was in his 60s, with distinguished gray hair and the confident bearing of someone used to authority. "My name is Harold Thornton," he said. "I'm the chairman of the board for this aviation company." Patricia's expression froze, her mouth slightly open. "Mr. and Dr. Reynolds," Harold continued with a warm smile. "So good to see you again. How's the new security software working out for our company, Anthony?" The board was extremely impressed with the last upgrade. Anthony shook the man's offered hand. "It's running smoothly, Harold. The AI threat detection component has already prevented 3 major breach attempts." Harold nodded approvingly before turning to Patricia, his expression cooling considerably. "Ms. Winters, is it? I couldn't help but notice you seem to have appointed yourself as unofficial security for our terminal." Patricia swallowed visibly. "I was just concerned about a family who happens to be among our most valued clients," Harold interrupted. "Anthony's company handles cybersecurity for our entire fleet, and Dr. Reynolds saved my grandson's life last year with emergency heart surgery. The Reynolds family aren't just passengers, they're practically part of our corporate family." The crowd that had gathered murmured appreciatively, several people nodding in approval at Harold's words. Patricia looked as if she'd swallowed something sour. "I had no way of knowing that. I was just being cautious." "Cautious?" Harold repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Or were you making assumptions based on something else entirely?" The implication hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Patricia's face reddened further. "I never said anything about—" she began defensively. "You didn't have to," Harold cut in. "Your actions spoke clearly enough." He turned to Officer Wilson. "I believe this matter is resolved, and the Reynolds family should be allowed to board their aircraft without further harassment." "Absolutely, sir," the guard agreed quickly. Harold then addressed Anthony and Vanessa. "Please accept my sincere apologies for this unpleasant experience. Rest assured we'll be reviewing our policies to ensure nothing like this happens again." "Thank you." "Harold," Vanessa said with genuine appreciation. As the family turned once more toward their jet, Patricia made one last, desperate attempt. "Wait, I want to speak to your supervisor," she said to Officer Wilson. "This isn't right. They're getting special treatment." "The only special treatment happening here," Harold replied coldly. is the extraordinary patience the Reynolds family has shown in the face of your persistent harassment. A woman who had been recording the entire exchange on her phone called out, "This is going straight to social media." As Karen gets shut down, several others in the crowd had their phones out as well, and Patricia suddenly seemed to realize the public relations disaster she had created for herself. Her face paled. "I think it's time for you to return to the main terminal, Ms. Winters," Harold said firmly. "Officer Wilson, please escort her back. This way." "Ma'am," the security guard said, gesturing toward the exit. For a moment, Patricia looked like she might protest further, but the sea of disapproving faces around her seemed to finally penetrate her obstinacy. With a final huff, she allowed herself to be led away, though not before casting one last resentful glance at the Reynolds family. As the crowd dispersed, Captain Rivera approached the family. "We're cleared for takeoff whenever you're ready. Everything's prepared on board." "Thank you, Captain," Anthony said, his voice showing the first signs of the tension he'd been holding back. "Let's get going." As they walked up the steps to their jet, Jordan looked back at the terminal building. "Dad, why do people like her always think we don't belong?" Anthony paused, considering his answer carefully. These were the moments that mattered most as a parent, how to explain the ugliness of prejudice without letting it dim his son's bright spirit. "Some people have a fixed idea of what success looks like," he finally said. "When we don't fit that picture, it confuses them. And some people don't handle confusion well." "That's putting it mildly," Nia muttered. Vanessa put an arm around her daughter. "The important thing is that we know we belong wherever we choose to be. We've earned our place through hard work and determination. And," Anthony added with a meaningful look at his children, "by conducting ourselves with dignity, even when others don't." As they stepped into the luxurious cabin of their jet, the flight attendant greeted them warmly. "Welcome aboard, Reynolds family. Can I get you anything before takeoff?" "Just some peace and quiet," Vanessa said with a tired smile. The flight attendant nodded sympathetically. "I saw what happened out there. For what it's worth, you all handled it with incredible grace." "Thanks, Diane," Anthony replied. "We've had practice, unfortunately." Once they were settled into the plush leather seats, Jordan's natural excitement returned. "Can I still visit the cockpit during the flight, Dad?" Anthony smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Of course, buddy. Once we're at cruising altitude." As the engines started up with a gentle hum, Vanessa reached across and took Anthony's hand. No words were needed. They'd been through this journey together. Not just the physical trips on their jet, but the longer, harder road of building success in a world that sometimes seemed determined to deny them their place. Outside the window, they could see Patricia Winters being escorted back to the main terminal, her posture stiff with lingering indignation. But from their vantage point, she was growing smaller by the second, diminishing in importance as they prepared to soar. "Boston, here we come," Nia said, echoing her father's earlier words as the jet began to taxi toward the runway, leaving the ugliness of the confrontation behind on the ground. The Gulfstream jet climbed smoothly through the clouds, leaving the airport and Patricia Winters far below. Inside the cabin, the Reynolds family gradually began to relax, the tension of the confrontation slowly melting away as they settled into the comfort of their familiar aircraft. "Diane," the flight attendant moved efficiently around the cabin, serving drinks and making sure everyone was comfortable. "We should have clear skies all the way to Boston," she said, handing Vanessa a cup of herbal tea. "Flight time will be about an hour and 20 minutes. "Thank you, Diane," Vanessa said, accepting the tea gratefully. She took a sip and felt some of the stress begin to leave her body. Jordan had already made himself comfortable in one of the plush seats, his gaming console connected to the onboard entertainment system. Nia sat across from him, but instead of reaching for her phone as she normally would, she seemed lost in thought, gazing out the window at the clouds below. Anthony watched his daughter for a moment before moving to sit beside her. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Nia turned to her father, her young face serious. "Do you think that video of what happened is really going to end up online?" Anthony considered the question. "Probably. Several people were recording." "Then what happens?" Nia asked. "That woman gets embarrassed on social media for a few days and then everyone forgets about it until the next viral Karen video?" The maturity and weariness in his daughter's voice made Anthony's chest tighten. At 14, she already understood too well how these incidents played out. The momentary outrage, the fleeting attention, and then the return to business as usual. Maybe, Anthony admitted. But maybe it makes a few people think twice about their own assumptions. Maybe it changes a mind or two. Vanessa joined them, sitting across the aisle. The important thing is how we respond to these situations. We can't control other people's prejudices, but we can control how we react to them. By staying calm and polite while people disrespect us, Nia asked, a hint of frustration in her voice. By not letting them strip us of our dignity, Vanessa corrected gently. By showing strength through restraint. Jordan looked up from his game. But why should we have to be the ones always taking the high road? It's not fair. A moment of silence fell over the cabin as the parents exchanged a look, navigating the delicate balance between honesty and hope that all parents of black children eventually face. You're right, it's not fair, Anthony finally said. But consider this, that woman back there had to work herself into a frenzy just to try to knock us down a peg. She had to call security, make a scene, embarrass herself in front of dozens of people. And in the end, where is she now? Still on the ground, probably getting lectured by airport management while we're up here. He gestured around the luxurious cabin. We get to leave her and her small-mindedness behind. That's the power we have. Jordan considered this, then nodded slowly. I guess that makes sense. Plus, Nia added with a hint of her usual spirit returning, Harold Thornton totally shut her down. That was pretty satisfying to watch. That brought smiles to everyone's faces, easing the heaviness of the moment. Mr. Thornton has always been a good man, Vanessa said. I didn't know he was going to be at the airport today. Me neither, Anthony replied. But I'm glad he was. Captain Rivera's voice came over the intercom. We've reached our cruising altitude of 39,000 feet. Weather looks good all the way to Boston. If Jordan would like to visit the cockpit, now would be a good time. Jordan's face lit up, his earlier concerns momentarily forgotten. Can I go, Dad? Of course, Anthony said with a smile. Just remember not to touch anything without permission. As Jordan made his way to the cockpit, Diane approached with Anthony's laptop and a folder. Mr. Reynolds, you asked me to remind you about the conference presentation materials. Would you like to review them now? Yes, thank you, Diane, Anthony said, taking the items. He turned to Vanessa and Nia. I should probably go over these before we land. Go ahead, Vanessa encouraged him. I think I'll take a little nap. It's been an eventful morning. As Anthony moved to the jet's small conference area to work, Vanessa reclined her seat slightly and closed her eyes. Nia returned to looking out the window, but her expression was more peaceful now. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Patricia Winters sat fuming in the main terminal, waiting for her delayed commercial flight. The incident with the Reynolds family had not ended well for her. After being escorted back to the main terminal by Officer Wilson, she'd been approached by the airport's customer service manager, who informed her that her complaint against the Reynolds family had been noted and dismissed. Furthermore, Ms. Winters, the manager had said, Several witnesses have reported that your behavior toward the Reynolds family was inappropriate and potentially discriminatory. This kind of conduct violates our terminal's code of ethics. Patricia had bristled. I was simply expressing concern about security. It had nothing to do with Ms. Winters, the manager interrupted firmly. I've reviewed the security footage and I've spoken with our staff. Your concerns were addressed multiple times by our personnel. Yet you persisted in harassing the family despite confirmation of their identity and status. The manager's expression had been professionally neutral, but unmistakably cold. While we won't be taking further action at this time, I want to make it clear that such behavior is not welcome at our facilities. Should there be any repeat incidents, we may have to reconsider your access to our premium services. The memory of the warning burned in Patricia's mind as she scrolled through her phone, trying to distract herself. A notification popped up. Her friend had sent her a link to a social media post that was rapidly gaining attention. With a sense of dread, Patricia clicked on it. There she was in living color, confronting the Reynolds family, being corrected by Harold Thornton, and finally being escorted away by security. The video had already accumulated thousands of views and hundreds of comments, most of them critical of her behavior. Classic Karen behavior, read one comment. The look on her face when she found out who they were. Priceless, said another. That family handled it with such class while she just kept digging herself deeper. Patricia's stomach churned as she scrolled through the comments. Her phone suddenly rang. It was her husband. "Patricia," he said when she answered, his voice tight. "Why am I getting messages asking if my wife is the airport Karen in a viral video?" Back on the jet, Jordan returned from the cockpit, his eyes wide with excitement. "Dad, Captain Rivera showed me how the navigation system works and let me talk to air traffic control." Anthony looked up from his laptop with a smile. "That's great, buddy. He said I have good radio etiquette," Jordan added proudly, "and that if I keep studying I could be a pilot someday too." "You can be anything you set your mind to," Anthony assured him. "That's what your mom and I have always believed." Nia, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly spoke up. "I've been thinking about what happened at the airport." Everyone turned to look at her. Vanessa opened her eyes, abandoning her attempt at a nap. "I was angry at first," Nia continued, "but now I just feel sorry for that woman." "Sorry for her?" Jordan asked incredulously. "Why?" Nia shrugged. "Because her world must be so small. She sees someone who doesn't fit her idea of success, and instead of being curious or expanding her thinking, she tries to tear them down. That's a sad way to live." Vanessa and Anthony exchanged proud glances. Their daughter's emotional intelligence continued to amaze them. "That's very insightful, Nia," Vanessa said. "Empathy, even for those who don't show it to us, is a sign of strength." "Still," Jordan added with a grin, "I bet she feels pretty silly now." That brought a round of laughter, the last of the tension finally breaking. "Let's focus on the good parts of our trip," Anthony suggested. Mom's big presentation at the conference, visiting the historical sites in Boston, trying that famous clam chowder everyone talks about, and shopping on Newbury Street, Nia added hopefully. Anthony chuckled. "Yes, and some shopping too." As they discussed their plans for Boston, Diane approached with the tablet she used for in-flight communication. "Mr. Reynolds, Dr. Reynolds, I hope I'm not interrupting, but we've received a message from Mr. Thornton. He wanted me to show you this." She handed the tablet to Anthony. On the screen was a formal-looking email from Harold Thornton to the entire board of directors and executive team of the aviation company. The subject line read, "New Inclusive Excellence Initiative." Anthony scanned the email, then passed it to Vanessa with a surprised smile. She read it aloud for the children. "Following an unfortunate incident at our terminal today, I am proposing an immediate review of our training procedures and customer service protocols. The Reynolds family, valued clients and friends of our company, were subjected to unacceptable treatment by another customer. While our staff ultimately handled the situation appropriately, I believe we can do more to ensure all our clients feel welcome and respected from the moment they enter our facilities. Effective immediately, I am establishing an Inclusive Excellence Initiative with Dr. Vanessa Reynolds and Anthony Reynolds as honorary advisors to review and enhance our approach to customer service, security protocols, and staff training." Vanessa paused, looking up at Anthony with wide eyes. "They want us to help revamp their entire customer service approach?" Anthony nodded, equally surprised. "Looks like Harold is serious about making changes. So something good might actually come from what happened?" Jordan asked. "It already has," Nia said thoughtfully. "That woman's ignorance led to a chance for real change. There's something poetic about that." Diane smiled as she took back the tablet. "Mr. Thornton also mentioned that your family's next 5 flights will be complimentary, as a token of the company's apology and appreciation." "That's not necessary," Anthony began, but Vanessa placed a hand on his arm. "It's not about the money, honey," she said quietly. "It's about acknowledgement, about making things right." Outside the window, the clouds had given way to clear blue skies. Below them, the coastline came into view, signaling they were getting closer to Boston. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Rivera announced over the intercom, "we're beginning our initial descent into Boston. Weather at our destination is sunny and 75 degrees. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." As the Reynolds family prepared for landing, the confrontation at the airport already felt distant, like a storm that had passed. Ahead of them lay a city full of history and opportunity, and the chance to turn an ugly incident into something meaningful that might help others in the future. 3 days later, Vanessa stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Boston Medical Convention Center. Hundreds of the country's top cardiac surgeons and medical researchers filled the room, all eyes on her as she presented her groundbreaking research on minimally invasive heart valve replacement techniques. And with this new approach, she concluded, We've seen recovery times reduced by 40% and complication rates drop to under 2%. Thank you. The audience erupted in applause as Vanessa smiled, taking a moment to look toward the back of the room where Anthony, Nia, and Jordan sat beaming with pride. The moderator approached the microphone. Thank you, Dr. Reynolds, for that remarkable presentation. We'll now take a few questions from the audience. Hands shot up across the ballroom. As Vanessa fielded complex medical questions with ease and confidence, Anthony couldn't help but marvel at his wife's brilliance. The woman who had been questioned about belonging in a private aviation terminal was now commanding the attention and respect of the medical world's elite. After the presentation, as people gathered around Vanessa to continue the discussion, Anthony felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Harold Thornton standing there looking distinguished in a tailored suit. "Anthony, I hoped I'd catch you here," Harold said, shaking his hand warmly. "I'm in town for a business meeting and heard Vanessa was presenting today. Thought I'd stop by." "That's very kind of you, Harold," Anthony replied, genuinely touched. "She just finished. It went really well." Harold nodded appreciatively. "I have no doubt. Listen, I wanted to update you on what's happened since the incident at the airport." They moved to a quieter corner of the room, where Jordan and Nia were playing a game on Nia's phone. "Kids, you remember Mr. Thornton from the airport?" Anthony said. Both children looked up and nodded, Jordan giving a small wave. "I wanted you all to know," Harold said, addressing the children as respectfully as he would any adults, "that what happened that day has already led to some important changes." He pulled out his phone and showed them a news article. The headline read, "Private Aviation Company Launches Diversity Initiative Following Viral Airport Karen Incident." "The board unanimously approved the Inclusive Excellence Initiative," Harold explained. "We've already hired consultants to review all our protocols and training programs. But more importantly, that video of what happened has sparked a bigger conversation." Anthony skimmed the article on Harold's phone. It described how the incident had gone viral, garnering millions of views and sparking discussions about racial profiling in luxury spaces. "What happened to that woman?" Jordan asked. "The one who called security on us?" Harold's expression turned serious. "Ms. Winters has faced significant consequences. The video was widely shared and she's been identified publicly. Her employer, a major financial institution with a strong diversity commitment, has placed her on administrative leave pending an investigation." "I almost feel bad for her," Nia said, echoing her sentiment from the plane. "Don't waste your empathy," Jordan muttered. Anthony put a hand on his son's shoulder. "Remember what we talked about on the plane? This isn't about punishment, it's about growth and change." Harold nodded in agreement. "That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. Something unexpected has happened." He swiped to another article on his phone. This one showed a formal statement from Patricia Winters. Anthony read it aloud softly. "I want to publicly apologize to the Reynolds family for my inexcusable behavior at the airport 3 days ago. My actions were driven by unconscious biases that I am now confronting. Nothing excuses how I treated this accomplished family. I am taking time to educate myself and reflect on the harm I caused. I have reached out privately to the Reynolds family to apologize directly and am committed to making amends however I can." Anthony looked up, surprised. "She contacted you?" Harold nodded. "She called our company first, asking for a way to reach you. I told her I'd pass along the message and let you decide if you want to speak with her." Anthony looked at his children, who were listening intently. "What do you two think?" Nia considered for a moment. "If she's really sorry and wants to learn, maybe talking to her would help. Or maybe she just wants to save her job," Jordan said skeptically. "That's possible too," Anthony acknowledged. "People can have mixed motives and still make genuine progress." Vanessa joined them then, having extracted herself from the crowd of medical professionals. Harold congratulated her on the presentation, and Anthony showed her Patricia's statement. "She's asked to meet with us," Anthony explained. "Apparently she's been doing some serious reflection." Vanessa read the statement carefully. "It seems sincere. And it's public. She's not trying to hide her mistake or make excuses. So you think we should meet with her?" Anthony asked. Vanessa considered this. "I think it might be worthwhile. Not for her sake necessarily, but for what it could represent. Reconciliation has power." The next day, in a small meeting room at their hotel, the Reynolds family sat waiting. They'd agreed to meet Patricia for 30 minutes before heading to the Museum of African American History, which had been on their Boston itinerary all along. When Patricia entered, she looked markedly different from the confident, entitled woman at the airport. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her expression anxious rather than indignant. She wore a simple blouse and pants instead of the designer outfit she'd had on at the terminal. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said quietly, remaining standing until Anthony gestured to a chair. "We appreciate you reaching out," Anthony replied neutrally. Patricia took a deep breath. "I want to apologize in person for how I behaved. There's no excuse for what I did. Can I ask you something?" Nia said suddenly. Patricia looked surprised but nodded. "What made you so sure we didn't belong there?" Nia asked. "What was it about us that made you suspicious?" The directness of the question seemed to catch Patricia off guard, but after a moment she answered honestly. "I've been asking myself the same thing. The truth is, when I saw your family, you didn't match the picture in my head of who flies on private jets. And instead of questioning my assumptions, I questioned your right to be there." She looked down at her hands. "I've spent the last few days reading about unconscious bias, watching documentaries, really trying to understand why I acted the way I did. It's been uncomfortable. I've had to face some ugly truths about myself." "That kind of self-reflection takes courage," Vanessa said, her tone not warm but respectful. "Not as much courage as it takes to face what your family deals with regularly," Patricia replied. "The comments on that video, people sharing similar experiences, I had no idea how common this is. How exhausting it must be." "It is exhausting," Anthony confirmed, "but we don't have the luxury of avoiding it. We have to prepare our children for it, help them navigate it all while trying to succeed in our careers and live normal lives." Patricia nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm committed to changing. Not just for show, not just to save my job, but because I don't want to be that person anymore." "Actions speak louder than words," Jordan said quietly. Patricia looked at him. "You're right. That's why I've enrolled in a 6-month diversity and inclusion program. I've also started volunteering at a community center in a predominantly black neighborhood near my home. It's not much, but it's a start." The family exchanged glances, silently assessing her sincerity. "I don't expect forgiveness," Patricia continued. "I just wanted you to know that what happened, as terrible as it was, has changed me, and I'm grateful for that, even though I deeply regret causing you pain." After she left, the family sat in thoughtful silence for a moment. "Do you think she means it?" Jordan asked eventually. "I think she wants to mean it," Vanessa replied. "Whether she follows through, that's the real test." "Either way," Anthony said, "what happened at the airport is already creating ripples of change. Harold's initiative, the conversations happening online, even Patricia's personal journey, it all matters." Nia nodded. "It's like you always say, Mom. Sometimes the painful moments are the ones that push the world forward, even if just a little bit." 2 months later, the Reynolds family was back at home, settled into their normal routines. Anthony was in his home office on a video call with Harold Thornton and several other board members, discussing the progress of the Inclusive Excellence Initiative. "The new training program has been implemented across all our terminals," Harold was saying. "And we've hired a much more diverse security team. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive." "That's excellent progress," Anthony replied. "The revised protocols you sent over look solid too." After the call ended, Anthony joined his family in the kitchen where Vanessa was helping the kids with homework at the island counter. The evening news played quietly on a small TV in the corner. "How's the initiative going?" Vanessa asked, looking up from Jordan's math assignment. "Really well," Anthony said. "They're taking it seriously. It's not just for show." "Did you see this?" Nia asked, holding up her tablet. On the screen was a news article about Patricia Winters. She had started a support group for people who had been called out for racist behavior and wanted to change. The group focused on education, accountability, and making amends. "Looks like she meant what she said," Vanessa observed. Anthony nodded. "People can surprise you." The news anchor's voice suddenly caught their attention. "And in our final story tonight, a viral video that sparked a national conversation about racial profiling has led to new anti-discrimination policies being adopted by several luxury service providers." The family watched as clips from the airport incident played on screen, followed by interviews with diversity experts and corporate leaders discussing the changes being implemented. "Hey, that's us," Jordan exclaimed. "We're famous." "For a good reason, at least," Nia added. Anthony smiled at his family. "You know what this means? Our bad experience might actually help other families avoid the same thing." "That's how progress happens," Vanessa said, putting an arm around each of her children. "One story, one change, one person at a time." Outside their window, the sun was setting on another day, a day when, somewhere, another family might walk into a luxury space and be treated with the dignity and respect they deserved, perhaps because of the ripples created by what had happened at an airport terminal 2 months ago. The Reynolds family had moved on from the incident, but its impact continued to spread, quietly changing hearts and minds, policies and procedures proving that sometimes standing your ground with dignity can shake the very foundation of bias and help build something better in its place.